Yo, what's up, guys? It's Matt from Top Tier. I'm back at you with another raw, unscripted, only slightly edited Ocarina of Time video, fresh for you. Now, before I get started, I wanted to just briefly mention that I'm about to hit 1,000 subs, and I'm trying to hit this goal by the end of the summer. So if you guys would and you enjoy these videos, please do subscribe. It helps me out so much. Thank you. And now, with today's video, I want to talk about briefly how the Ocarina of Time 2026 remake could influence the next mainline Zelda game. Since obviously Ocarina is going to come out much before the next mainline Zelda, and with the next mainline Zelda, we're probably about halfway through the cycle of the game coming out, considering Tears of the Kingdom came out in, 2023? Early 2023. So we still have a little ways to go, but it's on the horizon, and it's time to start speculating. But I think Ocarina could definitely influence the next game in a multitude of ways, and I'm going to go over just exactly how I think that could happen and what's likely. All right, and the number one thing and the most obvious thing is the dungeon first game design that's prevalent in Ocarina of Time and many of the other early 3D Zelda games, right? And so what I mean by that is like 6 to 12 unique dungeons. I think if Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom only players go back and they experience just how great a handcrafted, intentional dungeon is, they might actually want this and push for this in future Zelda games, right? So I think that Ocarina coming out before the next mainline Zelda game is going to have a huge impact in that way. On top of that, I think Nintendo already knows about the criticism from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's dungeons, and how essentially you just go around a set area and hit terminals to get to your objective. That widely is disliked, and I think that if new players get the chance to experience these traditional dungeons, they might actually fall in love with them, and therefore, put this at the top of Nintendo's priority list when it comes to making the next Legend of Zelda game. And the next thing I think that it could influence is item-based progression. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you essentially get your full kit, all your items and equipment right up front at the beginning of the game. There's nothing that really enhances your progression locked behind anything. You can go to any place in any order as soon as you get off the Great Plateau or the Great Sky Island. And I think with Ocarina of Time coming out, it might influence the game in that fans are going to really enjoy the item progression-based gameplay, where you have to get the hook shot, you have to get the long shot, then you get the bow, you get the Lens of Truth, the Iron Boots, the Hovering Boots, and these essentially gate parts of the world behind items, so that way you can enforce a more concise and linear story. And I don't mean linear in a bad way, linear in a good way. You could also have it where you can do, you could choose between one or two dungeons, or you could, maybe even you could have all the dungeons available from the start, but they're still, kind of gated behind these items. So yeah, there's ways to do that. I think item-based progression is definitely something that they could consider bringing back versus you get all your kit up front, and that's pretty much it for the rest of the game. I also think it could influence the next game as far as story and pacing goes. Ocarina of Time has some of the best pacing, and it has one of the best stories in the entire Zelda franchise, I think. So I think that Ocarina of Time could really influence the next game's story, and where it's more tighter and concise and told in a set specific order, versus what Tears of the Kingdom was, when you could just find the story in any random order, and the story almost kind of took a backdrop until you got to a certain point, right? Until you finally beat all the 5 dungeons. Up until that point, you could just do them in any order. You could collect the tears in any order. So the story was kind of negatively impacted by that in a way, and a lot of YouTubers have talked about this already. So I think with the next Zelda game, they could go in a more concise manner with the story, and pretty much just change how the pacing and progression loop happens in the new game. The next way I think I can influence it is more of a focus on music and musical instruments altogether. I think, the music in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom isn't bad. I know Breath of the Wild alone has some of my favorite pieces of music in any Zelda game, such as Kara Kara Bazaar. That music just embodies tranquility to me. But what they did away with was the emphasis on instruments and making music a core theming, like it is in Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword, right? I think they need to bring back, instruments like they had essentially in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Those are probably the two games with the best utilized instruments. Skyward Swords is okay. It doesn't really reach the same heights as Ocarina of Time, though. So one thing I loved about a lot of old Zelda games really had an emphasis on. I mean, you had a musical instrument in every game, and I'd like to see that return in the next mainline Zelda, at least to some extent. And I think they need to also double down on the soundtrack and make music a top priority again. I know, we had Koji Kondo at the helm of a lot of the older games, and that guy was just an absolute genius when it came to the music. But I'd like to see somebody really step up and fill his shoes and almost take his place and do what he did for the next games. Ocarina of Time soundtrack is just one of the best. Just about every track in that game is iconic. So yeah, that's what I'd love to see them do. Emphasis on music and musical instruments. The next thing I'd like to see is a more focused overworld. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I would say the overworld is what an ocean wide and a puddle deep is the analogy people use. Right? There's a lot to the open world and it's absolutely massive, but there's not a whole lot of depth to it. There's not a lot of meaningful rewards or side quests you can find. A lot of the side quests are just glorified fetch quests. So I think they need to add a lot more depth to the overworld and make it not as big, make it more concise. I keep bringing up the word concise, but I think that that goes perfectly, right? They need to trim the fat where they can. Right, add more impactful side quests, add more impactful rewards, add progression or add linearity where need be. I think that'd be awesome. But yeah, definitely a more. So when you think about Ocarina of Time, the only real flaw to that open world is that there's not a lot to do in Hyrule Field. And so if we created something like that, more concise, but just packed it full of more things to do per mile, I think that would go a long way. You don't need this just enormous map for the game to be memorable. You really don't. It was exciting in the first Breath of the Wild game, but in Tears of the Kingdom, it really just overstayed its welcome, and they doubled down on it, right? They created the depths, which were horrible. Nothing really down there of importance. And the same thing with the sky. I like this sky, but there's just really not a whole lot up there. It's just copy and paste shrine missions, and that's pretty much it, besides the Great Sky Island. So I think they need to really double down and make a concise, more impactful map in the next mainline Zelda. I think Ocarina is a good game to take inspiration from. But yeah, that's just it, guys. This is my my little video on how I think Ocarina could impact the next mainline Legend of Zelda game. Let me know what you think. Let me know, if you think Ocarina of Time Remake is going to have a huge impact on this game or not. I think that probably it is once it comes out and a new generation maybe gets to experience it. But anyways, guys, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs, as you know, by the end of the summer. So if you like these videos, and you enjoy them, and you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider subscribing. I greatly appreciate you, and I appreciate all the new subs that have come onto the channel. I can't thank you enough. Anyways, until next time, guys, this has been Matt from Top Tier. I'm out. Bye.